Bismillah, alhamdulillah, wassalatu wassalamu ala rasulillah. So we had started last week the overview of Surah Al-An'am, and we will continue with that overview. So today we'll be starting our overview from verse 68 of Surah Al-An'am. Now, people who oppose Islam and they are anti-Islam, they are enemies of Islam, so they come up with many tactics to oppose Islam. And one of those tactics is that they come up with one of the ways they use is that they start ridiculing the teachings of the Qur'an. They start making fun of the verses of the Holy Qur'an by mispronouncing them, by misinterpreting them, by making jokes about them, and things like that. So that was what was happening, and Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala talked about it and said, وَإِذَا رَأَيْتَ الَّذِينَ يَخُوضُونَ فِي آيَاتِنَا فَأَعْرِضْ عَنْهُمْ حَتَّى يَخُوضُوا فِي حَدِيثٍ غَيْرِهِ. That when you come across those who are sardonically cavilling at our revelations, withdraw from them until they indulge in a different topic. وَإِمَّا يُنْسِيَنَّكَ الشَّيْطَانُ فَلَا تَقْعُدْ بَعْدَ الذِّكْرَى مَعَ الْقَوْمِ الظَّالِمِينَ. And if the devil makes you forget, then after recalling, do not continue to sit with such iniquitous wrongdoers. So that's what this verse is about, that those people, you may have friends, or they may be your relatives, or they may be your associates, or you may be meeting with them to give them the message of Islam. Whatever the situation is, if they start making fun of any of the verses of Holy Quran, they start abusing the verses of Holy Quran, they start making fun of them and poke jokes on them, don't stay with them at all. Move away from them, go away and leave them alone doing whatever they are doing. You should not be part of this, and you should not tolerate such a thing. When I say you should not tolerate, there are three things. If people keep sitting there are three things going to happen. Number one is that if they are have ghaira for deen, and they have this attitude, if they keep sitting there, then they may react negatively, and they may be, instead of giving them da'wah, instead of inviting them to Islam, they may be able to react in a manner which will put the other person in defensive, and they may go further from Islam. That's one thing can happen. The second thing can happen is that if you remain quiet and you don't feel that ghaira and you don't feel the anger and display about their behavior, then you are developing a hypocritic attitude in yourself, because Allah's words are being poked fun at, and you don't even feel any compunction in your heart, and you don't even mind it. So that becomes, it start developing hypocritic tendencies in you. So that's why you should not stay there. And the third thing is that if you still want to stay there to give them da'wah, it's not going to work, because they are not in the right frame of mind at that time. They are not receptive. Da'wah should be given when people are receptive, when they can just pay attention and reflect upon the message which is being given to them. So from all three perspectives, there is no reason for a Muslim to stay where any of Allah's commands or teachings or verses of Holy Quran are being joked about. Now, this was at the time of the Prophet ﷺ, but it still happens. I have seen Muslims themselves making fun of Islamic teachings or making jokes about Islamic teachings. Islamic teachings are not such a thing that can be subject of joke. Doesn't matter it's Salah, doesn't matter it's Hajj, doesn't matter it's any other command of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. I have seen that sometimes people, when they are just having fun among themselves, they start making jokes, and those jokes are about those people who pray, or those people who perform Hajj, or those some of other things, matters of like that. Anytime anybody adopts that kind of attitude towards any command of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala or any verses of the Holy Qur'an, a true Muslim, a sincere Muslim should never stay there. They should move away from there for the three reasons I mentioned. And Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala said, وَإِمَّا يُنْسِيَنَّكَ الشَّيْطَانُ, that sometimes it may happen that you didn't realize this is happening and you stayed there. Means shaitan made you forget. فَلَا تَقُودْ بَعْدَ الذِّكْرَى, then don't, after you have realized it, then don't stay there. Move away from there. So that's one important reminder for all of us, that we should not tolerate anybody making fun of any Islamic teachings. We should not stay there. We should withdraw and wait for the appropriate time to give dawah to those people. وَمَا عَلَى الَّذِينَ يَتَّقُونَ مِنْ حِسَابٍ مِّنْ شَيْءٍ وَلَكِنْ ذِكْرَ لَعَلَّهُمْ يَتَّقُونَ. So those people who have taqwa, they are imbued with taqwa, are in no way accountable for cavillers. Like you won't be held accountable if you have followed the commands of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala and you didn't stay with them, you didn't participate in that, you didn't laugh for their joke, and you moved away. Then you are not responsible for what they do, but you have still a responsibility. وَلَكِنْ ذِكْرَ لَعَلَّهُمْ يَتَّقُونَ, that you still have a responsibility to give them the proper message of Islam if you have taqwa. So it won't be at that time, you will find another time, or at appropriate moment, you will still convey the message of Islam to them, and you will still advise them to take the message of Allah and the commands of Allah seriously. But then whenever they adopt the wrong attitude, withdraw from them. And Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala continues, so وَذَرِ الَّذِينَ اتَّخَذُوا دِينَهُمْ لَعِبًا وَلَهْوًا وَغَرَّتْهُمُ الْحَيَاةُ الدُّنْيَا وَذَكِّرْ بِهِ أَن تُبْصَرَ نَفْسٌ بِمَا كَسَبَتْ. So leave those who deluded by the worldly life. The worldly life has made the things like they have deceived you, because you are so much into the worldly things that you have forgotten hereafter. You don't care about hereafter, or your attention has diverted away from hereafter and you are focusing on the dunya. So you have become deceived by the dunya. Those are the people who make these kind of things, and they have taken their deen as laib wa lahu, and sports, play and fun. Deen is a serious matter. It's not a matter of play and fun. So if people have adopted that attitude because the life of this world has deceived them, then you continue advising them by means of this Qur'an. وَذَكِّرْ بِهِ. Bihi means this Qur'an. Keep reminding them, keep giving them message of Islam through Holy Qur'an. So, lest such a person be delivered to ruin for what he has earned, means you want to save them from the punishment of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, because by adopting that kind of attitude, by not taking deen seriously, by making fun of any of Islamic teachings, that person is destined to ruin and punishment of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. So you want to do a favor to them and remind them, because on that day, right now, you may be their friend, you may be their associate, you may be able to help them. But on the day of judgment, laisa laha min dunillahi waliyyun wala shafi', that on that day they won't have any intercessor or any patron, any supporter, any helper. So those about them, Allah says, those cavillers, those people who don't take deen seriously and start making jokes about it, are the ones who will be delivered to ruin for what they earned. They will have boiling water to drink and most grievous punishment, because they persisted in disbelieving. So that was a reminder from all of us, that whenever we find in our situation when people are not taking deen seriously and they're in a mood of having fun, even talking about the commands of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, we don't belong there. The next item I want to remind you is from Ibrahim alayhi salam's incident. Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, so far the whole surah has been giving different kind of messages, that how people should avoid shirk, all kind of shirk, and describing various kind of shirk, and telling people that shirk should all be abandoned in every form and people should come to Tawheed. Now Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala is giving an example of Ibrahim alayhi salam, that how he rejected shirk and came to Tawheed, because people of Arabia, they thought that they were following Ibrahim alayhi salam. They had respect for Holy Kaaba. They were coming for Hajj because they had inherited all those traditions. But along with all those things which were something left from Ibrahim alayhi salam and Ismail alayhi salam, they had started associating partners with Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. They had started making others equal to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. They had started presenting offerings and making du'as to those other than Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. So Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala is telling them that you claim that you follow the deen of Ibrahim, but deen of Ibrahim was not what you are practicing. Deen of Ibrahim was only Islam. He was a pure Muslim. He was actually exemplary Muslim. And he was very much dedicated to Tawheed of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. And how he developed that, remember we have been talking about that when we adopt faith, the faith must be adopted on the basis of rational thinking. People should not have blind faith. People should think rationally and come to Islam. And this is a prime example how it happened to Ibrahim alayhi salam. In the society he was born, including his own family and his own father, they were worshipping idols. They were worshipping sun, moon, stars, all those kind of things. And they were thinking that these idols and these things are going to be their intercessors with Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. They did not deny that Allah exists. They believed in Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. But they thought that, and remember, idols are not just idols, that people make something out of wood or stone and they worship it. They represented some good people or angels of the past. Like either they represented some angels or some saints of the past. So they were just using the idols as symbols of different people, either For example, Arabs used to, the idols they had, they were all about the angels of Allah, because they believed that angels are daughters of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. So Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala loves his daughter so much that if they intercede for somebody, then whatever you want will be given. So they wanted to please those idols, those angels, so that they will be interceding on their behalf to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. In the same manner, those people who worship idols, they may be for some saints of the past, some good people of the past, some prophets of the past, or so they have all kind of these reasons, but always they say that, oh, these are entities who have some divine powers, and they can hear our du'as, and they can respond to our du'as, and they will be interceding. And Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala keeps telling them that no such thing exists which can hear you other than Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. Nobody other than Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, if you make a dua, if you call for help, if you need something, nobody can deliver or listen to you other than Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. So you should always make dua only to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, nobody else. So at the time of Ibrahim alayhi salam, that's what was happening in the society. So if he would have not thought rationally, he would have been like everybody else. But he took the rational approach. He says, oh, what are we doing? Why we are worshipping these idols? We make them from our hands. They cannot defend themselves. They cannot talk. They cannot listen. They are lifeless. Why we are worshipping them? So he concluded that they are not worthy of worship. Worthy of worship is only Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. And this is how his thought developed. وَإِذْ قَالَ إِبْرَاهِيمُ لِأَبِيهِ آزَرَ أَتَتَّخِذُ أَصْنَامًا آلِهَةً إِنِّي أَرَاكَ وَقَوْمَكَ فِي ضَلَالٍ مُبِينٍ. Remember when Ibrahim said to his father Azar, do you take idols for gods? I see you and your people in obvious misguidance. وَكَذَلِكَ نُرِي إِبْرَاهِيمَ مَلَكُوتَ السَّمَاوَاتِ وَالْأَرْضِ وَلِيَكُونَ مِنَ الْمُوقِنِينَ. And thus did we use to show Ibrahim the reality of our universal kingdom, so that he could reason with his people and he himself attained certitude in the Islamic faith. So Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, once he used his intellect and rationally rejected all the false gods and came to the conclusion that he should be worshipping only the creator of the universe, nobody else, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala showed him the Islamic way. He appointed him his prophet and messenger and tasked him to give the same message of Tawheed to people around him. And later on, earlier, in Surah Al-Baqarah, Allah had mentioned that once he was in that way, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala even helped him to understand the way things happen behind the scenes, which Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala makes happen when he wanted to know, Ya Allah, how do you resurrect people from death? So Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala told him to take 4 birds, slaughter them, make their pieces, put their pieces on different mountains, and then call them, and they will come to you running. So that was a demonstration. These are the kind of things Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala usually shows his messengers. So when they are giving the message of Islam, they are giving the message of Islam on the basis of their personal knowledge and experience. So that's what Allah says, that Allah showed him Malakut as-samawati wal ard, that how the kingdom of Allah is operating, and so that not only he can give message to people that he himself has a certitude to stand up in all circumstances and give the message of Islam to people. But his thinking only started with rejecting the idols. His thinking continued about the stars and the suns and the moons, because they were also worshipped. So Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala says, فَلَمَّا جَنَّ عَلَيْهِ اللَّيْلُ رَأَى كَوْكَبًا قَالَ هَذَا رَبِّي فَلَمَّا أَفَلَ قَالَ لَا أُحِبُّ الْآفِلِينَ. Then when the night covered him over, he saw the shining planet, Venus. That, Venus is the most of the shining planets. So he saw it and wondered, this is my Lord? But when it set, he concluded, I do not like the setting ones. Now, the way Quran describes it, that when he saw this Venus or star or whatever you want to call it, then he wondered in like manner. So some people think that he had never seen these things before, like sun and moon and stars, and then they come up with the story that he was living in a cave because the king wanted to kill him. So the parents put him in a cave and he was being raised in the cave and he never came out, and now he came out and this happened. This is all nonsense. This is baseless. This has no basis whatsoever. It is just like when he was 14 years old, 13 years old, he started thinking, and when people think, these are the common things we observe, then, but when we are thinking, they take a different meaning and we start talking about them. Reflected upon, when he saw means he reflected upon it. Just take the example, how many of you know the story of Newton, that he saw an apple falling and then he concluded about gravity? Didn't he see apple fall ever before? Or didn't he see things falling before? No, he did. But when a person is in a certain mental state and thinking and reflecting, the same observation have different implications. So that's what happened. So we don't need any other story about that. It was a normal thing. He started thinking, reflecting. So first he rejected the idols. Then he says, oh, how about star? No, they are not worthy of worship either. How about moon? It's bright, beautiful. No, it's not worthy of worship again. How about sun? It's the brightest and it's biggest. How about that? No, he concluded, rejected all of those. So it was a thinking process, and he says, no, none of these things can be such things that they can be called upon for help, they can be worshipped, or they can be intercessors to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. None of them, because the only entity who deserves our gratitude, who deserves our worship, who deserves to be worshipped, who deserves to be offered things from us, or our sincerity to him, is Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, who is the creator of all these finite things. So he is infinite, and he created this whole finite universe. So nothing in this universe is worthy of worship or respect or things like that. Only the creator of this finite universe, the infinite creator, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, that's what I'm going to worship. So he says, Inni wajjahtu wajhiya lilladhi fatara as-samawati wal arda hanifa wa ma ana min al-mushrikeen. That I wholly, solely, completely turn my face exclusively towards him who created the universe from nothing. Fatara as-samawati wal arda. He created universe from nothing. But there is another point in there as well. Fatara means something which burst open, burst into pieces. explodes, that also is fatara. So he created out of nothing by an explosion, a rupture. Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala is giving us a hint about this big bang, that how to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. Now, when he did that, وَحَاجَّهُ قَوْمُ, his people disputed with him. And he says, قَالَ تُحَاجُّونِي فِي اللَّهِ وَقَدْ هَدَانِ, are you arguing with me concerning Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala while He has guided me? So what happens is that when you invite people to Tawheed and tell them not to equate any creation of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala with the Creator, not to consider anybody can intercede from those people to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, they usually say, oh, you are disrespecting those very powerful entities, you are going to suffer. Usually even now, when among Muslims people have wrong beliefs like that, they worship and they put offerings and they give nazar and they give niyaz to people other than Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. When you tell them about that this is shirk, this is wrong, they say, oh my goodness, you are going to suffer because you are disrespecting. So the same kind of things they said to Ibrahim alayhi salam, and he said, وَلَا أَخَافُ مَا تُشْرِكُونَ بِهِ إِلَّا أَن يَشَاءُ رَبِّي شَيْئًا. I don't fear the entities you treat as His partners in any of His powers, as no harm can happen unless my Lord wills something. Unless Allah wants, nothing is going to happen. Do whatever you want. And he actually challenged them and told them, كَيْفَ أَخَافُ مَا أَشْرَكْتُمْ وَلَا تَخَافُونَ أَنَّكُمْ أَشْرَكْتُمْ بِاللَّهِ مَا لَمْ يُنَزِّلْ بِهِ عَلَيْكُمْ سُلْطَانًا. How should I fear? Why would I fear what you consider as Allah's partners, while you do not fear that you associate partners with Allah for which He had not given you any authority, there is no evidence, without any evidence, just based on some stories you have heard. There are some stories you keep repeating to each other. On the basis of those, you are assuming that those entities can do anything and influence Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. Nothing can happen. Those are all stories. You should be worried about that with the Creator of the universe, you are committing shirk. You should be worried, not I should be worried about some bad thing happening, because nothing bad can happen unless Allah wants it to happen. So this was a very clear message given by Ibrahim alayhi salam to his people, and how they argue with him, and then Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala gave the example that this is the same mission which was coming from the time of Nuh alayhi salam, and other messengers of Allah gave the same message, and now Prophet Muhammad sallallahu alaihi wasallam is giving the same message. And it was told that Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam was told, tell them, La as'alukum alayhi ajra, I'm giving you this message selflessly. I don't want anything from you in return. And I just want you people to be saved from the punishment of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. So I'm giving you a reminder so that you can benefit from it. So I think that, we'll stop here. And if there are questions, we can discuss. So if there are any questions, you can go ahead. If not, then inshallah we'll conclude. سبحانك اللهم وبحمدك نشهد أن لا إله إلا أنت نستغفرك ونتوب إليك والعصر إن الإنسان لفي خسر إلا الذين آمنوا وعملوا الصالحات وتواصوا بالحق وتواصوا بالصبر. صدق الله العظيم. السلام عليكم ورحمة الله وبركاته.